If you're struggling getting started on a piece of artwork or you're feeling stumped, maybe these tips will help you. I received a message from someone asking me, what do you do when you just feel defeated or you feel like you're afraid that you're going to ruin your piece or you're afraid to even start? So these are some things that I thought of as I read that message. One of the very first things that I think of actually is, I tell my students this all the time. They'll be given an assignment to do, or they're starting a project of their own and they feel kind of frozen and they're not sure where to go from here. I'm always saying this, and I will actually say it to them again. I'll say, so what do we say? And they recite it back to me. I've said it so much. It's just a piece of paper, or it's just a canvas. So remember, it's just a piece of paper. It's just a canvas. So don't get so hung up on it that you struggle in that way. Another thing that you can do is put that canvas aside or that nice piece of paper aside and just grab a scrap piece of paper. Here's just a scrap piece of paper, and maybe you're trying to draw something and you're not quite sure how everything's going to come together. Try by drawing these little tiny squares and do some thumbnails. These are called thumbnails, and I usually try to do at least 3 of them. Maybe you're going to try to draw a cactus and you're not quite sure how you want it laid out. Maybe you want, so this one I could put, I'm drawing, can you see how simple? I'm not putting any effort into it. I'm just kind of, in fact, if you don't even know what it is, that's okay if other people can't tell, just so that you know what you're looking at. And I might say, okay, I want my, my horizon line right here, and then I'm gonna have the mountains way off in the distance, small like that. Now I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna, okay, let's try putting it over here, and this time we're going to have our cactus over here, and I want it to be mostly sky, so I'm going to put the horizon line way down here, and then I want to put my mountains even lower. So you can kind of play with it, and you can decide what the composition is going to be before you even start. Sometimes we're so quick to start drawing on our canvas or our piece of paper that we haven't put enough thought into the composition or the layout and exactly what we're after. And you might even end up going, you know what, I'm going to do my cactus so it's cut off and I only see part of it. And then my mountains are, you know, small as well, but I've got another small cactus right here. So you can see that there's a lot of different variations that you can do. And as you start doing thumbnails, you can kind of decide which direction you're going to go before you even pick up your paper. Once you've done the little tiny thumbnails, another thing that you can do is you can do just a quick, larger picture. So these are some thumbnails I've done, trying to decide what I wanted for doing this picture of a little old house that I saw in a small town I was traveling through. So you can draw it out, and you can turn it, whether it's landscape or portrait, and you can actually start adding some shadow shapes. So I put in some dark shapes, trying to help me see the depth and the dimension, and I laid it out in different ways so that I can decide which one I want. So that's one of the very best things that you can do, is kind of do some figuring and some doodling and decide before you even grab your nice paper what you're going to do to get started. So that's one of the very best things that you can do. Another thing that you can do is tell yourself, it's something that I struggle with all the time, but tell yourself that you're doing a study. A study is where it's a smaller version of a picture that you want to do, where you work out all the kinks. You try to figure out your colors, your soft edges, your hard edges, your composition, anything that you feel like you need to figure out. And if you consider a study, then if it doesn't work out, it's okay, because it's not your final piece. If you are constantly telling yourself that everything you draw or paint is a masterpiece and has to be wall-worthy, then you set yourself up for being really frustrated when it's not. Sometimes it just isn't. And allowing yourself to experiment and play with things is part of the fun of art. So I do this all the time to myself. I will get excited about a picture and I can imagine it hanging on the wall somewhere, or I can imagine gifting it to somebody. And instead of doing that, I need to tell myself I'm doing a study, a version of it, just to figure it all out. And if it becomes a masterpiece or something wall-worthy, That's wonderful. So don't set yourself up and get frustrated because everything has to be a masterpiece. And that's one thing that most of my students struggle with, especially the beginner students. They're so afraid to just play and experiment because they're afraid they're going to lose their masterpiece. So keep that in mind. You want to experiment. Just as a kid in the sandbox, how you played with things in the sand and you experimented and played with different toys and the sand and stuff. You want to play with your paints. You want to play with your pencils and getting soft edges and hard edges and just kind of having a fun journey as you draw and making it fun. So being able to focus on what you're doing and not the exact outcome will help you a lot. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're already working on a piece and you just are kind of stumped and you don't know what to do next and you're afraid that you're going to ruin it. I just grabbed this piece here. This is just a photo that I have. Let's pretend like this is something that I'm painting, and maybe, or maybe it's my reference. A couple of things that I can do. I can take a piece of tracing paper and I can sketch. Maybe I want to make it a little bit different. Maybe I'm going to say, here's my bird, and I'm going to sketch this out, but I really don't know that I want this other bird. So maybe I'm going to just have the one bird, and I want to put it on a different branch, or I want to put it on a birdhouse. Maybe I put the edge of a birdhouse here. What I can do is I can use my tracing paper to try to create what I want and kind of play with it. If I didn't like it, I can slide it over and move it around. And this tracing paper just helps me to be able to adjust things and play with them. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do, and I suggest this all the time with my students, especially in my painting classes, and that is to stand back. Sometimes when you're drawing or you're painting close up, you tend to look at it very, very close. But if you step back, then you actually see the whole picture. And sometimes you'll notice things that you didn't notice before, and you'll see adjustments that need to be made. I happen to do this a lot with my oil painting classes. They forget to step back a lot. So oftentimes I'll set the timer, and every 10 to 15 minutes when the timer rings, they automatically stand up or back up and look at their picture before they come back and start working on it. And this helps them be able to see the whole view, to be able to get a better perspective of actually what they're creating. Oftentimes I'll also set the timer and they have to stand there and look at it for a minute or two and just analyze it without going back to draw or paint. So this gives them a minute to stop and look at it and just think about what they're going to do next and to make a plan of what they're going to do. Another thing that I could do is if I'm working from a photo reference and I feel like I need to check it and make sure that it's everything's correct, I can turn my piece. And I usually have my students turn their artwork and their reference upside down so that they can check their shapes. They can check the negative space and everything around it. So by looking at it upside down, they're actually changing their perspective and they're looking at it more as an abstract. Another thing I have my students do is I'll have them snap a picture of it. So I'll just have them grab their phone and snap a picture of it, and they can look at that picture, changes their perspective as well, and they can also change it to black and white if they're struggling with values, and that will help them see if they've got their values right. So using your phone is a great thing to do. Another thing you can do is take a picture of it. If you're savvy with Photoshop or Procreate or any of those applications, you can actually put it in there and manipulate it different ways and try to decide what you're going to do next. So as artists, we all feel stuck and unsure at different times. Remember to just step back and analyze what you're looking at. Play with different tips that I've shared with you, tracing paper, looking at it upside down, taking a photo, or any of the other things that I shared with you, and try to decide what you can do differently. In our courses, we've talked about different things that you can do to improve your drawing accuracy, such as drawing upside down. We share with you a variety of different ways to simplify your drawing by drawing the basic shapes first. And also we share with you how to sketch and draw on a regular basis will help you improve your drawing abilities. So check out our online courses And remember that we all feel stuck at some times. Just stop and pause and give yourself a chance to figure out what you need to do next. I hope you got some value out of this video. Please leave a comment below or any ideas or suggestions that you might have that we could cover. And check out our courses. The link is below. See you next time.